Good evening, everybody. My name is Winifred Adams, and I'm your host of Making Life Brighter. And tonight I have two very special women who've come to join us for an important conversation on the work they've dedicated to. These two women, Cynthia Palmetier and Charlie White, are visiting us from Oregon tonight, and they come on a very special mission, which has a timely message. And they are involved in the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. And I'd like you to look that up as you follow along with us, because you're going to want to pay attention to what these women are doing. And these are powerful women with a strong voice and a strong conviction to spirit and to God, and most of all to country. So I would like to introduce both guests and have you look up ORSJA.org. Okay, ORSJA.org is the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. Now that's a tongue twister, say it fast. Welcome, ladies, to Making Life Brighter. And I know Charlie would like to begin our session this evening with a prayer, as she always does. So we would like to honor that. If everybody will take just a minute, please.
Thank you. Dear beloved Creator of all that is, we thank you for bringing us together for this opportunity to connect and share with the people the important work we can and must all do to reclaim our rightful place in your divine dominion. And we continue to ask for your protection from any and all hostile or harmful energies, so that we may reclaim our unalienable rights bestowed by you. Let it be so, and so it is.
Thank you, Charlie. That's beautiful. And so it is. And so you are. Thank you for coming here and being with us. Now, I'd like to properly introduce these ladies because they have a resume to beat the band, both of them, and they have an important mission, one that they take very seriously amidst their duties of being mothers and wives and way showers in their community. And first, I'll start with Cynthia. And Cynthia has a background that is taking all of her amazing talents, and she worked and attended Wilmot Bible Seminary and University, and moved to Portland, Oregon, where she resides now. And she obtained her master's in theology and one in urban studies. And Cynthia is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a great grandmother. And she worked, most importantly, in drug and alcohol outpatient facility for adults and youth. And when they lost their funding, she briefly taught school for the last 20 years. So Cynthia, tell us more about what you do and how you got into this, because you have much more really to your resume.
So I only taught school for a year. I actually acquired my AA in social sciences and my BA in sociology that fell over into criminology. Then I went on to Multnomah Bible College, and I had to get a theology degree because they insist. And so that's their thing. You have to have Bible at the Bible college. So I got my master's in theology and then a master's in urban studies. Now, I didn't want to do any of this, just to let you know. It wasn't my idea. This is just the way that the Lord sent me down that path. And then after all this was said and done, I've got these counseling degrees. I also have a KDAC, which is a drug and alcohol counseling degree. So after all this stuff, I no longer use any of it. For the next 20 years, I work in construction with my husband. I run a company. And
that's what we always do. We get a degree and then we don't use it.
yeah. Well, I have got to use it though, just not for money. I just didn't get to use what I learned until now. And even now I'm not getting paid. But 2 years ago, I got called into the Republican Party as a PCP, which is a precinct committee person. It's like the lowest level of government that you can go into, basically. And I have a few thousand people that are in my district that I'm accountable to. That was the beginning. A few months later, I met Charlie and Ron and probably William and Tanya at a Oregon's People's Rights meeting,
Yeah.
my very first one. And as I'm walking out, the Lord says, "You're going to join them." And I'm like, that's not my thing. That's my husband's, not me. But I did it. I signed up, and from there, it's just kind of moved forward, and to the point where everything that we've done in the Jural Assembly is crossing over with the other things that I'm doing in the Republican Party, as well as
Well, you're vetting the Republican Party policies right now and the candidates and educating them on common law, correct?
yeah, but I'm also backing the next governor of our state, and I am actually traveling with him right now. So it's more, it's so much more than I could have ever imagined or dreamed or thought about. You know, it almost blows me out of the water.
Well, I really want to focus on what your resume says, and that
Mhm.
says the importance of understanding. Is that understanding or understanding? The original Constitution versus the US. Is that what you meant? Understanding the Constitution? Was that just a typo? Because
It's not a typo. We understand. We don't stand under anyone.
see, that's the importance of this
Mhm.
language
Yeah.
and working with it and understanding common law. Now, before we get to Charlie, I just want to go over a little bit more. Cynthia, you've taken this up for what purpose? Why did you join this group besides being tapped on the shoulder and saying you will?
For years. So the sociology degree is huge in my learning some other things. My professors, I was very lucky. I had professors that were from different nationalities. And so I had a crossover in an understanding. And for me, I have the Holy Spirit inside of me that says that's true and that's a lie, period. And so I've moved forward in that. And I hate injustice. I was born that way. I literally cannot stand injustice. And so since I was a little kid, I've been in the principal's office many times for injustice, and it continued as I grew, you know, and I tried to tap that part of me down, but it didn't stay very down. And that's really how I ended up with the Jural Assembly, because they speak truth, and it's stuff that I had heard. I already knew the stuff that with the avenue that they were going down, but it became mine. It literally became mine, to the point where I can probably stand up to anyone, anywhere. I don't care who you are, how famous you are, how good you think you are. I can stand there toe to toe and say, if it's not true, it's not true. And I've been getting to do that a lot lately. So I get to practice it
Now
regularly.
you're literally in your mission, and
Yeah, I am. I literally, I say it like this. I was created for a time such as this. I finally, everything that I've done makes sense. None of it really, I liked it. It was fun learning it, you know, all that kind of stuff. But this really, I was created to do what I'm doing right now,
you
which I
must.
find kind of funny considering that the age I am now. I just laugh at it. I'm like, well, okay, it's
Well,
fine.
they always say everything happens with experience, right? So if
Mhm,
you don't
mhm.
life and have the experience, how do you know?
I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't have. And I've got to test the waters inside the church. I'll tell you, I've slung stuff. You know, I've challenged, I've debated, I've stepped on toes. They love me anyway. But I have.
Well, it sounds like you're following guidance by faith as well.
Yes.
And
Actually, it is by faith. I really wouldn't be doing any of this if the Lord had not have asked me to do it, you know. And I've the last couple of years have been probably the most exciting years I've ever lived, in spite of all this stuff that's going on.
So Cynthia, what does common law mean to you?
Common law means to me the right to answer for myself, to have my peers come alongside of me and answer with me, and not, for lack of a better word, not to be told what to do and how to do it all the time. You know,
And how do you feel that the government as it stands right now is not acting in common law with fellow mankind or with the citizens of the United States?
because they don't look at us as they don't look at me as flesh and blood, you know. They don't. I'm just I make the money. I'm just property. I am property. Well, I'm not property anymore because I'm sovereign. So, but before that, I was property, and literally everything that you do, you have to have a license, you have to be credentialed, you've got to have all this school, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I got news for you. What I have lived through and what I know has not come really from school or education. It's come from living my life, which is, I can say that for anyone. What you know comes from you living your life and what you've experienced around you.
Very good, very good. So I'd like to introduce Charlie White. Hi,
Mhm.
Charlie. Thank you
Hi,
for being with us. I want to
thank you for
introduce,
having us.
yes, and thank you for that lovely prayer, by the way. I actually felt that as soon as you did that. I just felt this energy come
Yeah,
in and down, and I'm like, ooh, this is good. This is really yummy. We appreciate that, and I know that the listeners will as well. I would like to properly introduce you. You are also a mother and a grandmother, right? And I love that you call yourself
accurate.
a service animal. I think all women are service animals.
Yeah.
You have children and they're trying to juggle all things.
Mhm. And
Uh,
right now I'm a nanny granny because my daughter has a full-time Monday through Friday job now. So I get my granddaughter off to her pod or her village co-op, whichever she's doing. She's not in conventional school because of the mask mandates.
Charlie, you are a student of journalism. Uh,
Mhm.
you were a copywriter in Portland and New York City, and you have a tendency for art. However, writing and journalism is really where your heart is. And you've been involved in a lot of different things in the community, including recycling programs and taking fluoride out of water and all kinds.
Keeping it out of the water system.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Portland had
absolutely.
a huge campaign. I was not able to do that in Washington County where I live. I'm in Portland gray area, so we're Washington County, but we're still Portland address. So I was going to meetings at Washington County Water Board for months before the Portland campaign kicked in because I wanted it out of the water. We had just moved to the county that was where it was. Fluoride wasn't in Portland's water, but it was in Washington County's water. So I went to a bunch of meetings before trying to get it out. And they said, no, it was campaigned in and you're going to have to campaign it out. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I went enough to get the lay of the land of the people in the area and the nature of the board. And I knew that there was not going to be anything I could undertake myself. But when it hit Portland, there were enough people who had a strong reaction. And we had a group that we were a part of called Safe Water Oregon. And Clean Water Oregon then became the name because we wanted to, it was a very stringent and wonderful campaign because we had a lot of good heads in this group and very PC oriented because they knew that if we said certain things certain ways, it would turn people off, but we knew absolutely. And so my husband and I hosted, I'm going to have a hard time remembering Paul, who's wrote a book actually about the fluoridation issue from the history all the way up to current time. And it was Edward Bernays who actually influenced a lot of what we do today in terms of advertising, marketing, and political campaigns,
Mhm.
because he knew the psyche of people as a result of the psychology of his uncle.
Amazing. Well,
So,
let's jump in, ladies, because we have a lot to cover today. And the reason that you're here is because you are on a fast track with taking common law across the country. And I know that there are many people that are doing different things regarding common law across this country,
mhm.
but you are particularly taking and spearheading that which is in Oregon, but you have a purpose to join it together across the country. Is that correct?
Ultimately, but we're very focused on Oregon. We figure that if we get it in here, if we can effect enough change on Oregon and get enough people behind what it is that we're doing, we do have a template. We do encourage other states and territories to do what it is that we're doing, but we have to model it, and we are.
Let's jump into actually what you've done and how someone would model what you've done. But first off, what is it that you've done that's so different?
We formed a very committed group of about 5 or 6 people, and we've had others before us, some of whom are no longer living, but who, we're we're multi-aged, but most of us are older, because we've experienced these drastic changes in color of law and the way things are going, and we're not happy with it. We're not having it. So, it's interesting when you recognize someone who shares a certain ideology and that you're determined. And so, it's a really quick bond when you find those individuals in your life. So we are, and we form, those of us who have been really involved are in the action committee. So I'm the director of the action committee only because I've been in it from the beginning of when we called ourselves Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. I'm by no means the leader of the group. We don't have a hierarchy. We each have very strong positions within ourselves, within the organization or the group, who, we each take tasks, and it's not assigned. We just know what we're led, we know what we're here to do, and we do it, and we work. We're all volunteer. We don't get funds. We don't have dues. We don't have any of that. We did have a wonderful contributor who launched us into being able to do some printed material and that kind of thing, but we're all volunteer.
Do you
So,
take donations from people? Does
oh
that
yeah,
help
yeah,
you?
we're happy to take donations, but we don't set it up,
You
it's
don't
just like if
solicit for
someone,
donations, you're just doing
mm,
the work.
yep,
And
yep.
so now that you've established yourselves more so and you're going, what's the objective? What's the main goal?
If you could put it into a definition, we are desiring and determined to get Oregon back to a constitutional Republican form of government. And when we say that, I want to clarify that this is not about Democrat or Republican. When we say Republican, it is the form of the governance that was offered and actually unalienably provided through common law, which is the closest thing to natural law, God-given law. So when we know who we are as people on the land, and I like the word denizens because we are people on the land, we are very clear about this law form, which is very simple, and it is of the people. And I want, Cynthia, if you could read the first, it's the Article 1, Section 1 in the Oregon Constitution. Now, not every state, now, first of all, what's important is we have the US Constitution, and there's the old one and the color of law one, and that's a whole nother issue. But then every state and territory has its own constitution, and a lot of people don't even know that, and certainly a lot of people more don't know or read it or pay attention. But our Constitution, unlike some, has a wonderful beginning, and it's Article 1, Section 1, and that's who we are with the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. So Cynthia, would you read that, please?
Article 1, Section 1 of the Oregon Constitution, all power is inherent in the people. We declare that all men, when they form a social compact, are equal in right, that all power is inherent in the people, all the free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness, and they have at all times a right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper.
Thank you,
Do you
Cynthia.
define what they may think proper? What if they disagree? How do you define that?
It's not up to them what they define. This gives us the right to define what we think is proper.
But how do you come to that agreement? How do you come to that common understanding?
Common law is based off of Bible, is literally we brought common law to this nation when we started this nation. It goes clear back to the Magna Carta. So common law was scripturally based, biblical teachings that our Constitution was based off of. The same thing. The Oregon Constitution is no different.
And I would add that it goes back even further than that, which is what I said is natural law, which is God's law. This is inviolable law. This is that no matter what you do, you cannot escape natural law. If you go out in the dead of winter and you think you're going to survive on your own, nature will slap you. So, this is natural law, and common law is very much like that because it's a social compact that people have. And it's unlike anything in our current government where it is commercial law. It's UCC code, it's Universal Commercial Code law. It became an incorporated governance that has nothing to do really with the people except to get money from us. It's to make money.
Yes, that's what we currently experience. However, you're looking to change that and change it all the way across the nation. How will you achieve that?
State by state.
And territory by territory.
Yes, you have to start with the states. I look at it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I look at it like the United States of America, what we call states are actually countries. And what we call counties are really states. Because everything is it should be determined from a county point of view. In a county, the sheriff is he is the highest person in authority. And it's supposed to be from that level up, and it's coming the opposite way. It's coming from the very top, from the federal back down again.
Are your local sheriffs on board with this?
Some of them.
Some, yeah, we're working on that.
We're working on them.
Yeah.
We really are. We are working on them, and it's taken time in the beginning. They really weren't. They are starting to look at things a little bit differently.
How do they value it currently against, well, does it, if they were to agree, for example, how would that change what they're doing and what they've done? If they understand fully in the totality of what you're doing and how you're doing it, how would that change what they do? How would it change the sheriff's departments, for example?
Will they be aligned with the people instead of with the corporation?
Okay.
They can't have a foot in both worlds. They can't support the governor, for example, of our state and support the people when the people are objecting to being masked and vaccinated.
Well, that's sort of what the sheriff of Los Angeles came out and said very pointedly. He also said the city assembly was voting on things without even giving them any notice. And there was no cooperation. So that brings me back to another point. How is it with common law that you can cooperate together for the greater good of your particular community? Give us an example of how common law would be enacted.
I would like to answer that. And I will say that we have a Leviathan situation with our government, and certainly here on Oregon with our Oregon
Mhm.
Health Authority, which we're addressing. So what happens is this is all top down. It's very big. We think for a minute that it's our government or our representatives, when in fact it's actually gone global. And common law is of the people. I'm talking about our neighborhood, our community, not even up to the county level at this point. We as the people on our land have issues just within our neighborhood that are really critically important and that we need to address. It's not about big government. It's quite the opposite. So, thinking about all the other states, we need to think about our own state, and every county on Oregon has a very different take on how they want their particular governance to go. And I think that's how it should be. It's like, we're all people, we're all different, we're hugely diverse, and thank God. So, how do we get that all pulled together? Well, we have neighborhoods, we have small communities. And then if you want to break it up into a bigger chunk, yeah, counties. Oh gosh, we happen to be in a state with boundaries, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be, and it's gradual. I don't even see government being the way it is these days in the future. I don't see us even having political parties. Ultimately, we're all going to be the people. We've been divided down. First we're the country, and then we're the state, then we're the county, then we're the blacks, and then we're the whites, and then we're the old and the young, and I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And now we're the masked and unmasked, and the vaxxed and unvaxxed, and it goes on and on and on. And we can't be divided that way. We're people, and we all have everything in common on a certain level. And that is, we want to be free. We want to love our kids. We want to be able to afford to live. We shouldn't have to be paying to live and breathe good quality air and have good water. We could figure that out ourselves in our community, in our region. What about being just regional? We're regional individuals, not individuals either. We're people. So let's be regional. Let's think about regional and how a decision that we take in terms of, or make in terms of using water affects our neighbors in another region, but not as a political thing. It becomes
You're asking people to be inherently considerate to their fellow man.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
do you find, as you work with people across the nation and even in your neighborhood and area with the common law, that you find people are actually inherently considerate to one another?
I do. I think that, considerate. We all have different perspectives. I think once we recognize who we are, that we're of our creator, we're fractals of the same source. And I want to zoom out. This is how I look at life. Okay, you have a zoom lens and you zoom out to the big picture of everything, and you recognize something that's very basic. We are in a battle of good versus evil. And it's not a religious war in the sense that we've known, like the Crusades and all of that. We are in a spiritual war for the essence of who we are, of our creator. We're fractals of the creator. And we all are a piece of that. And we all have equality in that. And it's very sacred. And we have a responsibility to recognize that connection and that source, and how we all are a part of that. And that there's a wonderful philosophy, Ubuntu, I'm sure you've heard of it, where the children, for example, will help each other win instead of compete against one another. That's the psychology and the philosophy of common law for the people to love. And my prayer, I pray every night for compassion, consideration, cooperation, love, and greater consciousness.
Man,
That's pretty simple.
that's the whole point, is it not?
Yeah, it is.
If we
If
could
that
really
happened,
do
we
that,
wouldn't need all of this framework, right? All of these laws and bylaws and statutes and conditions and mandates.
what in the world would we do with ourselves? All this corporate, it's taking up time. I mean, imagine all the things that are going on in the courts, and the world isn't perfect. There are people that do things, there are people that, have issues and problems. And so I guess I can pose this question to you, Cynthia. How do you see common law in your neighborhood, and give us an example of how you see that played out and working, or could work in a bigger framework?
My biggest thing, and I am out a lot around a lot of people all the time. And what I've learned is that when it's kind of like that, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I pray a lot is what I do. And I try to do what I joined with these guys to do is to awaken people. And the truth is that we only need a remnant of people to do what's right and to change. There was only a remnant that changed and freed us in this nation. Only 3% of everyone, that's it, changed
Well,
and shifted what takes place.
and I'll
When
build,
Moses brought those people
sorry.
out of the wilderness, they went screaming, yelling, kicking, and wanting to go back to slavery because it was familiar and it was comfortable and it was easy.
That's a
So
really good point, because what you're saying is that in the current system, we are enslaved and we are
yes,
bound to a system that is for profit, as opposed to and I'd really like to make this point clear, because all these interviews I've done regarding quantum, and even with others, seem to always harken back to the courtroom. And though I know that's a place, a vessel in dry dock, shall we say, that has the current jurisdiction supposedly, this is not about the courtroom. This is something greater. This is something bigger. This is common law, as you said, Charlie, is more about the tenets by which we live, as were founded many, many, many centuries ago, thousands of years ago, really.
yes,
Right. Yeah, I wanted to build on what Cynthia was saying. We're social beings.
mhm,
And, when you look at, say, the 3% or 5%, you can use statistics, it doesn't matter. But, when people recognize, because we all have beautiful hearts, I really do have a very much greater, more positive outlook on people, on humanity. And I really feel that once we see, and we're not marketed to, and we're not yacked at by the TV or politicians who have their agenda running or any of that, and we can really just drop into our inner knowingness and recognize that, oh, this is a good direction. This is for the benefit of so many more people, not just running some kind of equity issue or some kind of agenda that is drummed up by the Club of Rome or the monetary establishment, in Europe or whatever. It's right here, and it's local, and it's compassionate, and it's caring about our neighbor, our brotherhood, our next door neighbor, our family member, a teacher. It's compassion. And I think that we have so many examples of that everywhere all the time. And all the things that I know Cynthia and I personally have been driven by, and it's not just us, it's those of us who are in any movement that we care about, is what we see needs to be done. And we rise to that, and we work on that because we know in our basic self, almost a visceral experience, that it must be done. And to me, what common law is about taking responsibility for our own life not, trusting our legislator to do something, to create a law or some kind of something that is going to determine that everyone has to follow that rule. No, it's, we don't need all that law. We don't need all that regulation. We don't need citations. We don't need to be told that we can't go 5 miles per hour over the speed limit and get it and risk getting a ticket. Those are all ridiculous. We just need to be responsible and outward looking. And by that, it starts with inward looking, feeling within. We all have intuitive knowingness about what's right and wrong. And we're up against a very evil, very sinister system that is only viewing us as dead entities that have no real we don't. If you go into a court of law the way it's set up with the UCC, that's a jurisdiction for the dead. We can't even speak for ourselves. We have to have a lawyer or an attorney come in and represent us because we're dead. So the judge doesn't hear us. And as Roger, who got me into this in the first place, thank you, Roger, may you rest in peace. He said that, courts are banks. And that's basically it. And the judges are bankers. We have one document that we ask people to sign if they want to participate with us in the Jural Assembly. And that is that it is a living testimony in the form of an affidavit of truth. And it states that we are not a US citizen. That means that we're not owned by the U.S. corporation. We recognize that we are a living, breathing, mind, body, spirit being on the land, a person, a people, not a person, on the land, on Oregon. And we sign that document. I'm sorry?
Sorry, on being the key word in that.
On Oregon. Yes, we live on the land known as Oregon. And then we have 2 witnesses. So that individual, that person, that people signs their name in red ink. They print it and date it in blue. And then 2 witnesses do the same with their name. And then we red thumbprint, which is a symbolic for blood, because we are living, we are alive. And we're here to remind people that we are not chattel. We're not, just a bonded entity that is on the stock market for people to buy and bet on. We're not in the casino. We choose not to be.
So now,
So we formed our own court.
if people do that, let's say you've done that and you've declared that. To whom do you declare that, and how is that recognized?
Okay, in Oregon, let's just be real specific. So in Oregon, you used to write in the family Bible when a child was born and the date, and that's kind of how it was recorded. And then now the state comes in and you have a birth. It's considered a live birth, but you're actually required to get now not only a birth certificate, which means that you have a certificate on the ship, and then you're bonded, basically. So they've basically taken you from your mother's waters into their water, which is the admiralty law form of government. And so we never really were alive to them, because we came in from our mother's waters and we went into theirs, but they took us and they do with us what they will. And so, they make money on us, and we can't speak for ourselves to them. We don't exist to them. We're dead to them. That's the straw man. And so what we did, based on the original Constitution, our assembly has formed a lawful court of record, which is a common law court, a civilian court. And we have held grand jury meetings, and we had petite jury twice. And we've had 2 rounds of convictions, one for our governor two of our legislators, well, three. And then secondly, we had all of our legislators a trial. It's a process, but this is what we've done. We don't enforce, but they have been convicted by our court of record.
Do they recognize
Lawfully.
you've done that at all?
They have been noticed. They know.
Have they
They're
said
ignoring us.
no?
I would like to add something to that, though.
Yeah.
They have been ignoring us, but there is a gentleman that of the DOJ on Portland that has definitely been kicking his 2 cents into it and threatening us with potential arrest and imprisonment if we don't stop trying to enforce our
Position.
our trial. Yeah, our
Mhm.
position
Yeah.
on these people, which happens to be not just those 4 people, but our whole legislature.
Persons, we call them persons. We're the people.
Yeah,
They're the
all the
persons.
persons.
Have you ever established a vector point for your position? Literally? Like
Be specific. What do you mean, vector
longitude,
point?
latitude, vector point of your operational position?
No,
I don't know how to answer that.
It's
Give us an example.
literally like what your vectoring would be on the land where you position yourselves and how you position yourselves.
as in the longitude and latitude of like where we held trial.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, with the 2 trials that we had were open air, public, in the public square across from our state capitol on Salem. But what we did this time with the grand jury, because we had just noticed the Oregon Health Authority, which we have discovered has basically taken over every aspect of our state financially and otherwise. It's enormous. That's the Leviathan I refer to here locally. And we have held a grand jury just this last week. And it was on 02-22-2022. And we had, amazingly enough, we had 22 votes who agreed with our claim, the full jury vote. It was unanimous. And we had witnesses and we did it on Zoom. So this is a different way of doing it, but we're public. We're totally transparent. We don't answer to fear because we're lawful. We are peaceful. We ask for protection and we ask for direction from our Creator because we know that this is our unalienable rights, unalienable. There are 2 ways to pronounce it. And we have been violated. We're not slaves. We're not chattel. We don't deserve to be having to work to make a decent living, and some can't even do that. And if you know anything about Portland, we are known for our homeless situation here. It is despicable. And my heart goes out to every single human being who has to live that way. A lot of them are psychologically damaged. A lot of them are economically damaged. There's no excuse for it. In this culture, with the abundance that we have, there's no excuse for what's happening to the people by our government, who is, as we know, has a lot of corruption issues going. And I'll just leave it at that.
Cynthia, how do you address the future of common law with the candidate that you're supporting?
I want to say one thing before Cynthia starts.
I know, and I'm going to back up a little bit anyway. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say that, Cynthia has a particular job in the assembly that none of us would ever have tapped her for, but God did. And, it becomes that we're not a political organization.
No, it's government.
That's the funny thing, is we're not political.
No.
We're apolitical. But, we get roped into all of these things like, we had to address the post office because we were kicked out because we weren't wearing masks, and 3 police officers showed up because the manager didn't like it. So we took them to task. So now we go in the post office without a mask. But anyway, go ahead. It's just funny.
Well, so I'm all these things are going through my head, Charlie, as you're talking, and as yeah. So one of them is that, do you guys remember the movie The Matrix?
Sure.
That's, that's where we're at. We're the revenue generators for them. We're the ones that, produce all the energy to feed the powers that be.
We build the
There's all
prisons for the prisoners.
Yeah, there's all different names for it. And yeah, so that was the first thing that I was thinking about. I'm just like, we're just all revenue generators, and I can think of the Matrix and taking that pill. Because I'll tell you what, when I took that pill, there is no coming back from it.
Mm-mm.
You cannot undo
Yes, you
what
can do what you know.
you can't undo it. And I think that that's the biggest fear that people have. They have been duped. They have been amused, not think. Instead of amused to think, they've been amused. They keep the people, amused all the time with TV and propaganda and all. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So, and I'm sorry, Winifred, what was the question that you asked me? Because my whole brain just went like, oh, the what I'm doing.
Yes, you are.
Oh, it's probably one of the most exciting things, because I am what is commonly known. I'm an intercessor on top of whatever. I pray a lot. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and meet with a group of women and start praying for the first hour and a half. And I have to get up earlier than that because I have a construction company and a husband and, a family.
A mother you're still taking
Kids,
care of.
grandkids. I just, yeah. So I get to work on all of it, and I see things differently. My stuff literally comes out, and I'm just going to say it. It comes from the Spirit. The Lord actually tells me what He wants me to do, and so sometimes I'm like, Charlie, Ron, would you guys just download me with the information so I don't have to like look it up and spend all that time?
Think
I really
about it.
don't have time to do it, because it's literally the Lord tell me, you call that person, you call this person, you talk to that person. I have people in all different sectors besides the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. I have friends that are just deep into government stuff. And by the way, I don't like the word politics at all.
Yeah.
Ollie, double, ticks, blood sucking suckers is how I look at it. So I even correct my future governor of this state, and I say, you are not in politics. You have a mantle of government on you. This is about the government of the common law, actually. And the funny thing is all these people that have avoided us, I'm now following. I'm everywhere that he goes. I go wherever this man goes.
And I will
Seriously,
add
and it's kicking my butt right now. So
Actually,
I will,
do
I
the
will-
people recognize that? Does he recognize what you're doing and what
yes,
you
he does.
intend to take that forward?
Yes, I'm telling you, God has sent me all over this nation since COVID started. I have been back to DC 3 times. I have done assignments that my friends are just like, please stop doing the assembly. Please stop doing this. Please stop doing that. And it's just like, why? Why? I want my kids to be free. I want my grandkids to be free. I want them to know things that I didn't even know that I was being lied to. Do you know how pissed off I am at how much I've been lied to?
Well, I think a whole lot of people are about to join you in that.
Oh my gosh.
Understand the depth and the girth of what's happened and what's happening. Now, I have some questions for you. Do you both know about quantum grammar? Are you aware of quantum grammar?
more of it, yeah.
Has anyone ever approached you to use that in your current assembly?
No,
No.
but I have a real interest in it. In fact, just
Mhm.
last night I was listening to some of it. Yeah, I really want to integrate it into this because our language spelling, if you think just the word spelling is so critically important to be aware of because there's stuff going on all the time that we just gloss over it and we just think it's nothing, when in fact we're being massaged and utilized in ways that we don't even know. It's a subliminal thing that people don't even pay attention to how we're being used by the powers that ought not to be.
Well,
Mhm.
let me ask you also, you're surely familiar with Anna von Reitz and her,
Oh, yeah,
is this based on what she's done? Or is this independent of her?
we're our own assembly. We do things our way, and Anna has her way of doing things, and not to denigrate her or her members at all. But we formed a court of record, and we're just doing our work.
Interesting. That's
Yeah,
that's
we're
really
led. Yeah, it's not even a competition. I don't feel it a competition at all. We're just doing what we're led to do.
So how then do you take what you've done and have other people understand that? And then how do you stand on that? How do you go forward in, say, the tax laws? And, if you have some kind of involvement with the corporation at this point, how do you do filings? How does that work through common law?
Do you want me to answer that, Cynthia? I
I
I
like
can
to-
answer it because I'm the one that does it all the time. I actually own a corporation. My sunlighting, my business is incorporated. So what I do, because I am sovereign, is that because I'm sovereign, I can step back in to the Republican Party and do what I need to do, and then step back out when I need to. When I need to put on the hat as the president and CEO of my company, I can step into that and do what I need to do and then step back out, because that is what a sovereign people get to do. They get to choose how they're going to live their lives without being told. I am looking into, but it's not in the forefront of what I'm doing right now, how to undo from all that, including, like, I probably will never get another driver's license. I see no reason for it. I can use my passport, which I have. As a matter of fact, that's a whole nother, I have a very, from what I understand, important passport. I don't know why or how, but we tried to help me, Charlie, with this. So to get a higher classification in our passports by proving our sovereignty and that we weren't part of their system. And one of our members, William, he got his stars up to 4 on his passport card. And when my husband and I went to do it along with his wife, so we all wanted to do it. So we fill out all this paperwork, and I go and I get my passport card and my passport has 5 stars on it already. And that's like, and I don't know why. I really never get messed with. I travel all the time. Even when I messed with them coming back from Europe one time, because I wanted to bring some like really nice seeds back from Italy. They were so nice and kind to me. And they're like, well, I purposely told them I had them because I wanted to know why the food over there didn't mess with me the way the food in the United States did.
Interesting.
I purposely did it. And
Yeah.
of course they took me out because you're not supposed to do that. But I found out what I wanted to know from them. And they were very kind. And then they put me right back in the front and I got right out of there. I made it through faster than my husband did. And I got pulled out to be questioned. But I still don't understand the 5 stars on the passport card. So,
Well, maybe your meant to do this work and you're being guided to do it. So therefore it's being handled. It's
Yeah, well,
Clearly.
that's what I had to come to the conclusion of. It kind of creeped me out in the beginning. Did not like that at all. So I left my stuff the way it was. I didn't try to change it.
So let's define being sovereign for some people, because they may not understand exactly what that is, even though you've hinted at it and you've spoken to it. Let's define the idea of sovereignty and how sovereignty really can play into the whole concept of common law and a common law court. What does sovereignty really do for you, and why would anyone, or why would all peoples need or want that specifically, that as a title?
It means we stand under God.
Mhm.
We are free of any hierarchy. We are our own discipline, and we are our own responsibility.
So,
And we don't rule over others, and we're not ruled over by others. We are each independent beings of our Creator.
then how does one resolve an issue? Should there be a court system at all in the future? How do you manage situations where maybe there's a crime that's taken place, or there's a person that's not quite mentally stable, and then there's a dispute or something? Like, how do you handle those things? Because not everyone is capable, in other words, of managing themselves well in our society currently. So,
And right now they're not, but the way that it used to be accomplished was that if somebody did something to another person, say, they went out and they killed someone, then they would be held accountable before a group of their peers for what they did.
mhm.
And basically, so when we held our trial, we'll say on our governor and the other three, and we found them guilty for not adhering to their oath of office, which I read in the beginning in Article 1, Section 1. That they haven't been taking care of us. They haven't looked out for our welfare or any of that stuff. Therefore, they
contrary.
broke their oath of office. Therefore, they're not fit to be in the positions of honor that they hold. But we did that, and then we have the restitution that we're asking for the juror members and stuff like that. But the truth is that it needs to go next into their own court, into what we call the de facto court, and where they are tried by a peer of their own people.
Yeah, when
their lawlessness.
Yeah, when we convicted them, we sent letters to all the DAs on all the counties on Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
demanding that they take action based on our jural decision. We had a petite jury, and it was unanimous. And so we provided them with the information that we had found, and they have not done anything, because it's kind of like when you ask someone to punish their, like if your right arm did something bad and you want to pull it in, your left arm's not going to really want to do anything about it, because it's part of your same body.
That's
So,
an interesting point. Yes, because
that we're asking them to monitor themselves or correct. And in fact, in a lot of our documentation and our notices, we've said, and I said this to Martha Walters, who's the Supreme Court Justice for our judicial system on Oregon. I sent her a notice, and we gave her an option to self-correct, but she hasn't. And if we state specifically about our own Oregon Constitution, there was historically an error. I'll say it an error. It was an intentional error made, where Amendment 7 was changed from original to amended, and both of those our articles are in our Oregon Constitution, and our judiciary has changed as a result of that amendment, but it was done corruptly in 1910, I believe it was, so that the individual who put that into the Constitution, it was never ratified. It was snuck in, and it changed our court system on Oregon, and they're all fake. They're fraud. And so we've asked them to self-correct, but they won't. They haven't.
So now, how do you compare to, say, the common law court of Brussels? And how does that factor into what you're doing? The International Common Law Court.
Well, I do know about Kevin Annett. I think you have or will be interviewing him.
Mhm.
And thank you, Cheryl, for connecting us all together. She's one of our members. Kevin has been working tirelessly. In fact, it's his work that I learned about quite a few years ago. And I did some transcribing of his interviews with a woman who had a vlog. And I learned so much about what's been going on in Kanata. And they're taking their country back through common law. He's been working on this tirelessly and at great risk, actually, I will say, because he's up against the Vatican and the monarch and England and all of that. And he's been doing this for years. And they are running their own parallel government. And they will soon, I believe, because especially what's going on now with the truckers and the freedom movement there, I think that there's going to be a real swing in that direction, unlike anything that anyone could have anticipated, even probably Kevin himself, because it's like the 100th monkey. People recognize what's good and right. And people recognize once they are shown what's wrong and not good, evil. So, it's like it's time to choose our lane. And I think this consciousness that's flooding into our timeline is absolutely divinely inspired. Our creator is not going to support the dark when the light is so bright.
I agree. For I concur. I love this. So glad you're both here. This is wonderful. So
We agree.
in showcasing your hard work, is there any other state right now that's also coming into joinder with you at this level? Is there anyone else that's championing your fortitude at the moment?
We've had other states who've connected with us, Colorado, Texas, California specifically. The thing is that, there's a real specific thing that happens with your understanding of jurisdiction or understanding of jurisdiction. For example, on Oregon, there are a lot of groups now. In fact, there's a woman who's been trying to get all the diverse groups together, which is wonderful. And we're trying to do that too, but it's difficult because, we talked about the trigger word or the trigger idea, and then all of a sudden people get turned off. But the important thing is to recognize that all of these organizations that have been sponsored by a 5013C corporate designation are not in the de jure. It's the same thing as holding the right arm accountable by the left arm, because they're not, they're still within the corporate structure, and they're fighting for the people, but they don't get the fact that they're still fighting from within a system that's corrupt and has nothing to do of any interest in supporting them. So yeah, they may get a break in their taxes, but it's really important to understand the jurisdiction and the law form, because it's the law form that's the trick.
And
When
so,
you understand the law form, then you pull back and you say, wait a minute.
what does de jure actually mean? Why those words?
I'm glad you asked, because I looked up the definitions for this very moment. And it's really simple. De jure is according to law.
Mhm.
by right. Very simple.
Oh,
And that's what it is. Common law is very simple. It's clean.
mhm.
De facto has a lot of definitions. Not formally recognized while being in effect is one of them. Exercising power as if legally constituted,
Mhm.
resulting from economic or social factors rather than from laws or actions of the state.
Now that's de facto. Is that
That's de facto. I
well,
could give you a few more.
I want to make a point about that though, because people in positions of authority use that all the time. When they say something, if you acquiesce to them, it becomes
Color of law.
color of law and a reality that they can like literally imprison you with.
okay, so let's
Yeah.
talk about color of law. Let's talk about what that means specifically so people understand the differences.
I'm an artist. Can I define that? You have a canvas. It's the common law constitutional canvas. It's a blank canvas. It's really pure and simple, and you can put anything on it you want. But then in comes the corporation constitution, UCC code, and all the stuff that goes along with it. And so you have one person who comes in the room and they put a color on it. And then you have another person, another decade that comes in and they do a color on it. And then you've got a legislator and a senator from, who knows where that comes in and puts another color on it. And pretty soon you don't have the same painting that it started out with or the same canvas. You have layer upon layer upon layer of interpretation and statutes and ordinances and all of these stipulations, requirements, and ways that we must live that have nothing to do with just living our lives and getting along.
So Charlie, what happens when you put different colors, one upon the other, upon the other? What color do they turn out?
They
Changes the
change.
color, right?
But they turn black.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
begin to mix all those colors together, they turn black.
That's a good point. Now,
They turn evil.
Yeah,
Cynthia,
right.
how is it that the Republican Party would warm up to this entire concept? How would the Republican Party, or will there even be a Republican Party in the future?
The Republican Party right now is really split. I found that an interesting assignment from God. Just it was almost like funny because I walked in there and the one thing that they complained about in Multnomah County was that the party had almost tripled in size after COVID hit, me being one of them. And they didn't like Christians. It was being taken over by the Christians,
But let's
which
remember that these are
yeah,
all ways to divide the people.
it was.
The
But
parties, the religions, they're all to divide the people. So they
if you
don't,
go back to the original Constitution, there was no parties. There wasn't,
it's the people.
they were all the people. There wasn't parties. That didn't come until later when they started, and then
May I share something? The Articles of Confederation, 1777, the first article. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. That's the whole article. Article 2, it's very basic and simple. Article 2, each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States and Congress assembled. That's Article 2. Article 3, the said states hereby severally enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for their common defense, the security of their liberties, and their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other. Doesn't that sound nice? I mean, it's pretty simple. Against all force offered to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatever. And it goes on. That is so basic. It's human basic law. It's natural law. It's common law. It's law of the land. People to people, loving and cooperating together in friendship and harmony. This sounds really ideal. It's utopian, but you know what? It's doable. I believe that.
You sound like you believe that, and that's the important part, is you are doing this. You two are part of this collective that is spearheading this, and you're fearless. And it seems to me that I can't find a reason why you would necessarily be a threat to any of the corporation that sits around you. It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. Why are you a threat? Because is peaceful, loving kindness a threat? Is the extended outreach for cooperation a threat? Why is it that the corporation thinks that cooperation is a threat?
It's a mindset because they work in a system that is a hierarchical system where typically it's the ladder, and you start in a position and then you work your way up and you work your way up and you keep climbing the ladder and you keep getting a higher income, benefits, whatever it is, notoriety, power. It's all a mindset. So when you're in a hierarchical system and you are, elbowing your way here and you're fighting your way there, and you're wanting more money, or you're wanting more power or position or notoriety, it doesn't matter. That's the mindset. And we're asking them to self-correct. We're saying, hey, guys, you don't need to do that. You don't need to have, 5 houses. You could just have a lovely home and coordinate with your fellow peers and figure this out. It's not about what I get or he gets or she gets. It's about community, and it's about cooperating with one another, because if someone gets a whole lot more and there's only 100% of this and they get 80%, that means someone else gets 20%. Or, it doesn't make sense. It's not right. And that's not, and that's not socialism. That is humanism. That's how I see it. It's like considering everybody else, like when I go into a public restroom, I clean it up. I don't want to, I'm embarrassed at how some people use a restroom. It's that basic. Like if I'm going through a pile of things and I'm sorting through them and I have, these things like a toothpick, even I'm trying to figure out where I should put it so that it's good for the environment. I mean, this is just like considering our part in the whole.
Very
It's
good.
just human nature.
What's your take on the common cooperative and why it seems like this is so threatening to the powers that be around you?
My take on it is that the powers that be want to stay in power, and they will do just about anything to retain that power. That's my take on it. And what we're doing by bringing truth, there's when you know the truth will actually make you free. Make is a present progressive verb, line upon line, precept upon precept. It's not a consistent thing. It's not set you free, it's make you free. And that you have to walk it out. And there is no quick fix to where we're at. We have to walk it out. And we are walking it out and taking back the land. That's how I look at it. I'm taking back the land. This land does not belong to the enemy, which to me, it's, we're under siege. We've been under siege since, the Civil War, since probably before that, but we won't go there. So
Do you see there to be a change? I mean, can you foresee?
I can definitely, for our state, I can definitely see it.
What makes you say that?
Just because of how just the different areas that I had no intention of ever getting into government, anything. And that's what I call it. I am not in politics. I am in government.
There are so many rallies and gatherings of people who are coming together. No matter what their organization or affiliation is, people are coming together on our state in public display of, making noise, wanting to know what they can do. Like when they come to our booth, for example, and we're set up at the state capitol or other places, and they'll say, "What can I do?" Or "What do I need to do here?" So they're ready. They're wanting to participate and fix it because they know something's not right. They're suffering, especially now with the whole COVID thing. Where people's lives, their businesses have been dismantled, or they're struggling, or their kids can't go to school without having to wear a mask. There are a lot of people who are really starting to see that there are a lot of impositions on their freedom that they really kind of took for granted or didn't really think about too much. But now it's become quite personal.
That's
And when it gets personal,
yeah, it
people
is.
start responding personally.
Now, the CPAC conference is going on down in Florida right now. Do you have any representation in that event in any way, talking about what you're doing? Is anyone down there, are they aware of what you're doing, Cynthia?
Not that I'm aware of. Getting people over the fear of what we do has been extremely difficult, because the people that I encounter are actually, when I first started trying to share this information with them, to my close friends, they were actually afraid. They're afraid.
And it's better
They're
that our
afraid. They're
friends
afraid
be
of the
afraid of
truth. They're
us.
afraid of being imprisoned. They're just afraid of all kinds of stuff.
We shouldn't fear our government. Our
No,
government needs to be
they're afraid of the
aware.
government and what they can do to them.
Mhm.
Even though they agree, you know, it's like I said, it goes back to that thing of their babies and you've got to feed them a little bit. But once their eyes start to open, which they are starting to open. Many people's eyes are starting to open, and they're starting to believe. And this is where this third part of what I'm doing in this campaign has come into play for me,
Mhm.
because it's getting some recognition. And when I leave and go over to Sisters and
Redmond,
yeah, that one,
Hamilton.
Redmond. I want to say Reading because anyway, Redmond and to Bend, and you said that area this next week. I will be taking one of our documents and handing it over to a potential someone that's running for governor. And the person that I'm backing for governor, that I'm with him in his, as he travels, I'm going with him. He's all on board. And I'm telling you, that is got to be one of the most refreshing things that I've encountered in all this time, because we have just pushed. And when a door shuts on us, we just look for another opening to continue to go through, to get our message out and to get it out there.
And the problem that we find is that people want to know, but they feel intimidated by not knowing. It's kind of like how school is now, where kids feel like they're stupid if they don't know the answer. And our job is to educate. We really want to have people understand what it is that we are about, why we're doing what we're doing, because this is not, I never chose this in a million years if I'd been given it as an option, but here I am. And in fact, here I am in my studio, and I'm not painting, I'm doing this stuff. So, well, it's my journalism too, because I'm writing and I'm editing and I'm, there are some things, it's like with Cynthia, everything that we've done in our previous rest of our previous years has led us to this place of what it is that we're called to do and why we feel that we're capable of doing it. So it's
Both definitely come across as people that are very convicted toward this mission. Now, let's say that someone saw this and they wanted to contact you, they would go to the website, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And they would join you there. But what's joining you mean? What happens if I want to join you? What happens if I want to come into Joinder with you and do something? Well,
We have meetings.
work.
We have a meeting every Monday night at 7 o'clock, and it's on Skype. But as a result of the last 2 times that we've been on Zoom, we were on Zoom for it was a public meeting, it was a public invitation to all of our jury pool and beyond to join us for a discovery about a particular issue that's going on here on Oregon. And so that was quite well attended. We were pleased. It could have been better, but it was the first time out. And then we decided that it would really be beneficial if we could provide this same platform for our grand jury. So now 2 times we've had Zoom meetings. And we have decided to go ahead and subscribe on Zoom so that we can have a once a month meeting for people who don't like or can't get onto Skype for whatever reason. And they can join our monthly or weekly, we have weekly meetings, but they can come monthly on Zoom instead of the other times on Skype. And I think it'll increase the opportunity for people to participate and find out more about what we're doing and how they can help. One way they can help is to contact the DAs who we've sent these notices to and follow through and hold them accountable for doing their job. But the other thing is some people feel intimidated by that. Even myself, it's kind of challenging when you have to go face to face and toe to toe with someone in a position of what you consider to be powerful or have, hierarchy over you, and that I maybe don't have enough information. So that's our job, is to educate and, work with people, talk with them. They can go on our website. We do a lot of recordings. They're available on BitChute and YouTube and the public TV channels here on Oregon. There are all kinds of ways that they can jump in. It's basically learning so that, if they have some fire under them about something that's felt not right, or, it could be a school issue, it could be in their community, or there's something that's personal that they feel intimidated about, or traffic ticket, it's all that kind of thing. We are a court of record, and we will go to bat for them. We've discovered there's a tool called the claim of cognizance that we've put out, and we've done that for certain individuals who felt that they've been violated, and it's been effective. So yeah, there are all kinds of ways you can find out just by looking.
But when they do join, which we do a lot of outreaches and going to events and stuff like that, where we set up and actually talk to people and sign them up to become sovereign and part of our jury pool. I always encourage them to get educated, because it's kind of a worthless thing to do if you do not understand it. Like, I know if anything happens to me, like if I have to go back to DC for something again, or anywhere that I end up going, that if something happens to me, I know that their system does not have jurisdiction over me, and I know that lawfully. I know that, and that they can't. They may be able to take me and put me in jail, but they can't keep me and they can't hold me because I'm not in their jurisdiction, and lawfully they know that. That's the thing about beginning to educate yourself and knowing it. Like, I have no fear about it. I have no fear of them doing anything to me,
Well,
which is a very powerful place to be,
Yeah, it's
especially
empowering.
in this day,
Mhm.
because
when
they
you
can't.
reverse the idea of fear altogether, when you're taking fear and you're stepping outside of fear,
Mhm.
you're moving fear into faith. Now
Yes.
you have an entirely new energy field of which you
Yep.
work. What's interesting though is,
Faith, hope, and love.
yes, but even those
That's the one.
that know this, they know that certain people that work in these positions, let's call a spade, they know this is going on, and yet they're perpetuating that against people in certain instances. Some people are doing it not wanting to, but they're afraid to lose their job. Others are willingly participating in those types of activities that are harming other people. So now you have that, but the funny thing is when you stand, like you're talking about, in your faith, they kind of retract, they sort of retreat. Again and again, I've heard these stories. People have come to me sharing these stories, especially after I got into the quantum thing. And I think it's interesting to note here that there is some kind of what we'll call trickery that's going on to the
Mhm.
people. And that trickery is keeping people, as you said earlier, Cynthia, enslaved. And therefore they're working for someone else as opposed to, like you said, Charlie, thriving. And the idea of thriving is your intention moving forward. So someone comes into this with you, they come and join or they join you. What do they need to do with you to become sovereign? And is that required in order to be a participant with you?
They sign the living testimony in the form of an affidavit. And we only expect that they will understand what that document says. And as I said earlier, they have to recognize that they're not a US citizen, because oftentimes you'll say to someone, well, I'm a US citizen. Why are you a US citizen? Why are you wanting your privileges to be given to you by a government when your creator gave you all of the privileges that any human being would ever want? So it's recognizing, it's a mindset, it's an understanding that you are a human being, a living flesh and blood human being. And it takes a while for people to recognize that, because then comes along with that, they're thinking about, well, gosh, if I'm not a US citizen, then do I get Social Security, and do I do this and that and taxes? And all of a sudden the mind goes crazy, because we're so conditioned to be under the spell and the authority of the government and
So,
all of the registration and certification therein.
and a US citizen is somebody that works for the government.
Right.
A US citizen is military, or, any one of the people that, the however many people they have that, that work for the federal government. Those are US citizens, or you're born on Washington, DC.
Mhm.
That's it. We're not US citizens. We're
And
nationalists on the
yeah,
land.
and what's interesting too is that when we vote, when we register to vote, and unfortunately what we're finding is a lot of people are registered for, they don't actually do their own voter registration. But when people do register to vote, they have to admit or agree to being a US citizen. So what we recommend is, if someone is signing up to vote, whether it's for an independent party, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, they can step into that jurisdiction, agree to be a US citizen, vote, and then step out. There's some people who now, knowing that, don't even choose to vote because they really question if their vote even counts. And there's that whole other layer of issue.
Well,
But
on account of the quantum grammar, the quantum community recognizes that Russell J. Gould took down all voting systems in 1999, but the corporation refused to give up and refused to give in to that filing or that standing. So
yeah,
therefore, everything in between would have been fraudulent, including everything now and going forward doesn't exist. So they look at it as though it's all fiction. However, and anything you're writing would be considered fiction. Yet, what we know also is that people are still living and breathing and dying, and they're going through things that they're going through at the moment. So just the same, people need to wake up to what's going on and the things that you're doing and the things that you're endeavoring to achieve, because there's something amiss in this formula of what we've known as our world. And now you're willing to be one of those peoples, and I say peoples plural,
Mhm.
that takes a stand and is willing to take a stand, and hopefully come into joinder with others to take a stand as well, to say, we recognize that we're living. We recognize that we're honored, as Cynthia said, by God
Mhm.
here. And when we honor God, God honors us in return. Maybe that's the real problem. Maybe we haven't honored God properly as a whole.
It's recognition. Yeah, it's self-recognition, and it's recognition of our creator. And Source has given us the abundance of everything that we benefit from. And there's also the abundance of what we don't want, but tend to focus on sometimes by virtue of this kind of cynicism that we have to do this and we have to do that. And, if I do that, we have fear that there are going to be some recriminations. And we can't live our lives in fear. We have to live it in a creative sense and in a full-hearted sense. And it's so stifled by so many of the regulations and rules that we're forced to live by. And it becomes very convoluted and complicated when in fact life should be simple and joyful. And that
Mhm.
personally, I believe that I choose my day, I set my intention for my day to be joyful and filled with the things and the people I love and doing the things that I love doing. And I feel very blessed in that. Not everyone has that opportunity, but I think that's important to set that intention, because no matter what conditions we live in, we can change it. We are very powerful. And when we set our intention, and that intention overrides the conditions that we've gotten ourselves into by not setting our intention, set them high and set them free.
Well, I think that we have the opportunity to make changes, and maybe some of the hypnosis we bought into for so long has been that there are no changes because this is how it is. And in a
Mhm.
way, that's no different than a dictatorship all unto itself.
Yeah.
So, Cynthia, I wanted to ask you, in your travels and in the things that you've done led by spirit, even though it looks like it's for a reason of maybe everyday purpose or living, what's one of the things that stood out to you the most, that was awe-inspiring or miraculous, that took place to really anchor home that whatever you're being led to do is so important? It matters.
So when I joined the assembly, and a couple of weeks into it, I did not become sovereign until I totally understood it. I wouldn't do it. My husband understood it, and I was like, you should be the one to be doing this, not me. And but once I understood, I did it. And then I asked the Lord, I said, why? Why am I going to be going back to school again? Because everything was over my head. It was all legal. I mean, I have a Black's Law dictionary, and the original version of the Webster's dictionary. That's like my new, it sits next to my Bibles. I'm not kidding. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And the Lord actually told me, he said, because the very way that the enemy bound us with the law, which is what he's done. Think about this. The law is that we're going to use the same thing to free us. And, and you can't, it's very hard to go out and to try to explain that to anybody. I've said it. Believe me, I know some, especially in the world that in the church, we'll just put it that way. I know some pretty heavy hitters. The world that I stepped out of into the government realm was one of prophets and apostles, internationally and worldwide known, and I worked with a large ministry. So I'll just put it that way. And so this is, you know, and that was actually very good training for me because they can be very difficult. I'll just say that. You know,
They're-
people are people.
they're
People are
equally-
people.
Equally convicted.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm very excited to be about the work of my father and doing what I'm supposed to do, you know, to basically my agenda is to restore heaven, to restore this earth back to its original form. And
And-
it's up to us. We're the ones that get to do it. Charlie knows that. It's us.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I think your conviction daily is a benchmark for people to stand on.
Yeah.
Begin your day as you do and in the way that you do. In a
Eh.
way, it begins the day with not only faith and prayer, but it also begins the day with cooperation as you're getting together. And I think that's a real
Mhm. Your quantum stuff I've understood for a long time, but I've been trying, Charlie's been trying to, she's
not
gonna have to
my
like,
quantum
she's
stuff.
gonna have to school me in this, but I do understand moving stuff in the spirit realm through a quantum. I've understood that for a long, long time.
Well, that's how
So
I lived my whole life.
that's
As
me
medical
too. And it's,
intuitive and all that, seeing the world in a particulate matter form
yes,
that made
Mhm.
sense as if the world was speaking to you in the matter form. And it's hard to even describe that. It's hard to put that into words, but understanding, let's say
I
higher
know how to
thought.
describe it. It's more real than what this is.
Yeah, I'm with you.
More real than reality.
That's my
Yeah.
reality. It's hard for me to remain in this realm.
Yes.
It always has been. That realm is more natural to me,
Yeah.
you know, but I chose to come here to do this.
Yep.
I remind myself of that regularly. I chose
In
it.
the right time and the right place.
You see, I think it's easy to have faith. I could not figure out for the longest time why people didn't see the same thing. Why is it so hard to feel that? So in your courageousness, and I'll call it that because, you know, you might get pushback after this. You might get a little bit of, no, we're not going to give in. And then again, you might draw many more people that say, hey, I totally get that. Let me learn more. And what's the next step, ladies? What happens next? Where do we go from here, from this moment on?
We
way we-
continue to walk in truth and love,
Yeah.
spreading hope, because it is a message of hope. It really is. And helping people to grow in faith and to be healed. They're damaged. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There's just so much damage and they don't even know it. They're deaf, dumb, and blind, basically.
Well,
You may
the
want
other
to cut
thing,
that part
just
out.
from a pragmatic standpoint or practical standpoint, as the assembly does one action and then another,
Mhm.
and as we come together in our meetings and all of that, we never really know where the next step is, but we know
Mm-mm.
that we need to take the next step. And right now we've taken a huge one on our state. And it's interesting because we were led here by a situation that we didn't invite in, but somehow it came to us. You know, it seems that Creator has designed the step-by-step path or approach to whatever it is that ultimately we're here to accomplish. We don't know what the end goal is. We have an idea. You know, we think that we've defined what it is that our end goal is and what the procedure is. I sent you the Jural packet and the law in a nutshell documents, which we send out regularly so that people have sort of a foundational understanding of who we are and what we do and where we're going and the definitions of things and the history in a nutshell. But really, we're just taking a step at a time. Like I just talked with Ron today and I said, well, what do we do next? And I said, you know, I've done this part with Martha and I know there's something next to do. He says, well, let me think about it. So yes, there's always a next step. We don't always know what the next step is, but we're willing to keep going. And we know that we couldn't have gotten here without all the steps before. And we didn't plan it. It wasn't pre-planned. It
Mm-mm.
wasn't an agenda. Our only agenda is to get us free of all of this imposition on our rights and our ability to just live our lives in abundance and joy.
Well, that's a beautiful purpose and mission statement. Now, if let's say hypothetically, hi puppy, if hypothetically all of your state turned into common law, how would your state fit into the rest of the republic, assuming that one day it'll be a republic again, or it is?
We would be a shining example for other states who are feeling the frustration of imposition on their and a violation of their rights, because we are all under the Constitution of the United States of America pre-1861. Little do a lot of people know it, but by example, we would be able to show our beautiful country how living free and living our lives in a state of beingness instead of a state of fear and violations of our rights and all of the impositions that are innumerable would be a shining example, we would hope.
Do you really think that if people right now, if all of Oregon, for example, didn't have to have a driver's license, because of the social conditioning and things like that, would it take time to roll over into responsible behavior, or would it just kind of go crazy?
I think everything's incremental. I don't think there's going to be a big fast shift, but we're working on it. You know, there are a lot of dedicated people in our state right now, on our state of Oregon, who are working each in their own way. We have organizations, they're 501(c)(3)s, it doesn't matter, but there's Children's Health Defense, there's Free Oregon, there's our assembly, there's Anna's assembly, there are other organizations and assemblies as well. So everyone's working. We're, you know, the people, there are a lot of people here doing a lot of different things that are all basically same directed, which is love, be free, live our lives, and you know, and love our children and have them be in a state of non-compliance. You know, this is really frightening to think that our children have to comply the way they do, and the imposition of the mask wearing and what it's doing to them psychologically, to me, is just devastating.
Cynthia?
So I think that one state can do a lot. First, I honestly believe, and the assembly does as well, that we cannot take our nation back without taking our states back. There is no taking. Each state has to get back to its original birth, its original coming into the union, their original constitutions, and most of them aren't. Second, there is one state, one person can make a difference. I know that you've heard of Mark Thielman. He's in the news. He was a superintendent of Alsea School District, and he a little tiny school district on Oregon, and he decided that, you know, he wasn't going to shut his school down. It didn't matter. He was going to figure out ways that the kids could still go to school, and his board agreed. And so they created all these different ways for these kids to go to school and to continue doing sports. And then as soon as they finally admitted that the masks didn't work and that they were unhealthy, they immediately that day called an emergency board meeting. The board did, and they gave the power back to the parents, and it was up to the parents whether they masked their children or not. Now, this didn't go down well in our state. This has just been going on the last couple of weeks, but it did give the kids in California, the rest of the kids in Oregon, and the kids up in Washington have started walking out of their classes because they do not want to be masked, and they're saying no. So there's been this huge walkout. So yeah, one state, one person can make a difference.
Well, they always say that one realized man or woman can move mountains, right?
Yeah,
And influence millions.
yeah.
And you know, there's still a debate as to whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. And this is when you wake up to the degree of what you might call the corporate fraud situation and how you are in fact bought and sold regularly. The irony is that most Americans, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but many Americans are okay with that because they don't want their status quo personally to change. Unfortunately, we may be headed for some things that rattle us free of that position. And something like what you're doing is almost the basket that's waiting to catch those that say, oh my gosh, what happened? What's going on here? Because they're late to seeing the totality of what's happening. How do you see that in Oregon? Do you see people asleep or do you see people awakening?
Both,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly the latter. I think, like I said, the impositions on us in these last 2 years has awakened a lot of people. You know, and it's kind of like a wave, you know, there's maybe a neighborhood or a county or a region, you know, that's really upset. Our state is very diverse in terms of some of the attitudes of different counties. Like, for example, Redmond, Oregon and Bend, Oregon, which are only a matter of maybe 10 miles apart, are very diverse and different in how they take these mandates. Bend, for example, is much more more people from Portland. For some reason, the larger populated cities have more of a progressive, I guess you'd say, approach to legislation and mandates and all that, whereas people who tend to be more conservative, more on the land, as opposed to working in cities, for example, have a very different approach. So I see it as waves, you know, where when we look over our shoulder and we see that, well, that community did such and such, and it's actually pretty good. But I just saw that today it's going to be very different in terms of who wears the masks and who doesn't by the governor. It's broken down into color sections, color coded. I just saw that today, where the mask mandates aren't going to be lifted for some regions as opposed to others. Now, I don't know how they come to that decision, but doesn't smack. So
It's not
yeah.
making sense. Well, you know what? I have to say that I really loved a quote that you had, and I need to do a little shout out here of something at the base of your email that you sent, and I really love this. So I want to read this
Please do.
because it's just so perfect for this time frame. This is a quote by Joseph Pulitzer, of course. Our republic and its press will rise or fall together. An able, disinterested, public-spirited press with trained intelligence to know the right and the courage to do it can preserve that public virtue without which popular government is a sham and a mockery. A cynical, mercenary, demagogic press will produce in time a people as base as itself. I love that. The power to mold the future of the republic will be in the hands of the journalists of future generations. I think that speaks for itself by Joseph.
And I put that Occupy the Media, hashtag Occupy the Media at the bottom of most of my emails, because that's truly what has driven this whole mania. I call it a COVID campaign because they've commercialized this from the get-go. It's been a rollout. I've been in journalism. I know the power of media and marketing. I know the power of TV, you know, television, and how influenced it has been, influencing in everyone's lives who watches it. You can almost go out on one of our streets in Portland and see who watches TV and who doesn't, by virtue of their mask wearing and their opinion about what's going on. It's really, again, palpable.
it's interesting to see the psyche. Although I will say this, I still believe in the human heart, and I have faith for all souls, no matter what. And I'll hold that position. And ladies, this has been a real pleasure. I want to say thank you for coming to be with us here on Making Life Brighter and making our lives brighter by sharing your courage and determination and all of your educated process of what you're going through. We'd like to hear more and keep updated with you as we go along. But for those that are listening, if you would share and like and let people know what these ladies are doing about common law up in Oregon, this is important. And you know, you can also visit them. You can join their organization at
Mhm.
orsja.org, orsja.org, and that is the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we close?
Well, I would just like to thank you so much, Winifred, for having this opportunity to talk to a greater audience, because it really is just about discovery, education. We're all here to learn, and we're all on our own journey. And not everyone is ready for this. Not everyone is open to this. And there are people who are craving it. So we're just here in service to help fellow people educate one another, because that's what we're doing. I don't know all the answers. I don't even know how to define some things. I have to look it up, because there's so much to learn and there's so much to unlearn. And I think it's just a very
Yes.
thrilling time to be alive, because it's exuberating. It's exhilarating.
Well,
Thank you
Cynthia,
for having us.
thank you. This is wonderful to be among like souls and old souls and
Mhm.
convicted souls. That's what it's heartwarming. Thank you. I appreciate this
Thank
very, very
you.
much.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you so much.
well, all right, everybody, go jolly. You're listening to Making Life Brighter, and please feel free to share, because all voices must be heard. Very good.
Yes.
We'll see you next time. Take care.
Lovely. Thank you so much.